When I was a little girl, my great-grandmother would sing hymns to all of her great-grandchildren. And we had a blessing for many years in my family to have 5 living generations. And when I would go visit my great-grandmother, she would do 2 things upon my entering her room. The first one would be to straighten up her wig because she did not want people seeing her without her hair looking right. But she also told us as the little children to grab her tambourine, and she would sing songs as we sat on her lap, and even as I grew into a young teenager, to learn about Jesus. And I did not know who Jesus was then, really. I didn't have a personal relationship with him. But I remember the words and the songs, even today, of my great-grandmother when she said that Jesus loves me. And she knew that with confidence and with a level of assurance, even in her 90s. And I remember going to vacation Bible school as a child when they told us that Jesus loves little children. And what I realized as I began to grow in my faith when I finally went to college is that God all along in the early years of my life had been planting seeds so I could know him and I could love him. And what I found is that God is love. So when we commit to mentor, we mentor for love. And the reality is, in our world, there are all kinds of messages about love. Love is an emotion. We can love the wrong things. We can love the right things for the wrong reasons, or we can love the right things wrongly. The Bible calls that idolatry. But God is love. And the truth is that he has told us how it is that we can love each other rightly and how we can love the right things, the things that he says are priority and important and perspective and provide perspective in our lives. So love is something that I think we must learn, and it's something that we also teach. When we commit to mentor, we mentor for love. In the Gospels, one of the Pharisees, an expert in the law, was trying to test Jesus. And when he asked Jesus what was the greatest commandment, Jesus said to him to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. And that's the first and greatest commandment. And he said the second one is just like it, that you love your neighbor as yourself. And he said all the law and the prophets hang on these 2 commands. That's the reading of Matthew 22:37 through 40. And so when we mentor for love, what we come to understand is that we can know and love God. It puts God, again, in our view, and we know him as the one who loves rightly. And we also learn to love our neighbor. And sometimes we question whether or not we can love our neighbor, we should love our neighbor. How is it that we can respond to those who might not be as lovable? But Jesus has a way of helping us to become more like himself, to love our neighbors as we love ourselves, and that's an assumption. So when we commit to mentor for love, one thing we do is that we acknowledge and receive the love of God. The first pillar of the mentoring framework is to know and love God. God is love. So when we commit to mentor for love and we commit to love, what we're doing is we are professing with our entire being that we love God back. And this is an act of obedience. Because what we see in the New Testament is that our love is evident in a lot of times in how we respond, what we actually do, how we act, and our obedience to God is directly connected to whether or not we love him. And so when we are not obedient to the things he's called us to do, primarily to make disciples, it is evident that our love for him is deficient. The second commitment we can make when we think about mentoring for love is to love other people. This is the third pillar of the mentoring framework, to love our neighbor. And we know from the Good Samaritan story in Luke 10, verses 25 through 37, is that sometimes we do want to choose who it is that we should love and who it is that is our neighbor. But at the end of that parable, when Jesus is teaching, He asked the hearers, who was the best neighbor, or who was the neighbor in the story? It was not the priest. It was not the Levite. It was actually the Samaritan, the one who showed mercy for the one who was trapped in a ditch, the one who was lost and broken and needed help. And so we don't love by how our emotions lead us all the time. What we actually find in the Bible is that we love by the things that we do. We love is evident in the choices that we make, the decisions that we make. And so we have a responsibility to set the right tone as we mentor others, to set a loving environment as we mentor others, to teach them as mentees what it means to love, to know and love God, and to love other people well. And so I encourage you to remember that the very reason we mentor at all, the very reason that we call people to follow Jesus, is because we love God, and God compels us to love other people. Today I'm equipping you to lead on purpose, to mentor for love, to mentor for life.